Okay, weird question incoming. But do you have any people in your life that like the Star Wars prequels? I know, a bit personal, but I feel I've grown to trust you. In my demographic, let's call it 20 to 29-year-olds, aka the people in the right age range to have grown up with the prequels, liking them isn't so uncommon. One of the first non-animated films that I have memory of watching is Attack of the Clones on a DVD that my dad owned for some reason. He didn't even like Star Wars. I'm not sure why this just spawned on our family's media shelf. But despite being at ripe conversion age, I mostly shared his opinion. I also hadn't seen Star Wars for the most part, not outside of the random episodes of Clone Wars that used to show up on Cartoon Network. It wasn't until the sequels came out in my late teens to early 20s, giving me a reason to finally check out all the movies, that I sat down and watched them in release order. And I still didn't like the prequels much. And I assumed that was the majority opinion for a long while.
Star Wars The Phantom Menace was the most disappointing thing since my son.
Probably the most famous Star Wars reviews are the Mr. Plinkett prequel reviews, and edgy content therein notwithstanding, they are legitimately excellent YouTube videos. Multiple people have said that they can basically act as a Film 101 class. They're so informative and dense, and I agree. With clear argumentation, Red Letter Media uses the basic principles of film to prove that these movies are just not very good. For a long while, I assumed everyone just understood that. Then, a little while after the release of The Rise of Skywalker, hearing it was hilariously bad, I decided to rewatch all the movies in a Discord call, record some reactions that have mostly been lost to time. But mostly, just have fun dunking on some bad movies and chatting about film history a bit with some friends.
I don't like sand. It's coarse, and rough, and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
And I found myself surprised that several nerdy guys in my group were, politely, mind you, upset at how dismissive I was towards these prequels. At least one of them, to this day, will argue with me about how they're good actually.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
Again, this arguing was in good fun. I promise I don't make a habit of surrounding myself with those types of Star Wars fans. If you know, you know. I left the call feeling kinda curious, honestly, because they were passionate about their love of these movies, and I am, if anything, a person fascinated with fandom as a concept. It helped that as I had more conversations with these friends, especially Luck, who I stream with about once a week these days, he just doesn't understand. I started to understand his attachment to these films. I buried the lead here a little bit. I was always at least a little aware that some people liked the Star Wars prequels, but had mostly heard that it was just nostalgia blindness for something they saw as a kid, combined with an obsession for special effects and a general lack of knowledge on what actually makes a good film. And I must say, I became a bit dismissive of them. Because isn't that a bit cringe? Isn't liking a film that's been proven bad by facts and logic cringe? More data was needed. So I spoke with one of my cringe friends, and after a little while talking with Luck, I found that we were basically talking past each other. I wanted to figure out why. As a good little debate kid, I know that sometimes all you need to do to settle an argument is make sure your definitions are clear. And this was our error, it turned out. I defined the prequels as those 3 movies starring the lovely Ewan McGregor. He defined them as an era within the Star Wars world. To the casual, that may be a distinction without difference, but keep in mind that even before the modern era, in which we get a new Disney Plus Star Wars show every year, there was an insane amount of supplementary material available. The aforementioned Clone Wars is one. Then there's the mini novels, and that's just official content. Fans have been speculating on the world building and writing fanfiction since the first film came out, and that only increased exponentially with the prequels and the internet. I found that the difference in between me and Luck, this lack of extra context as well as content, was quite vast. I found that, at the end of the day, when I was watching Attack of the Clones with him, we were basically seeing 2 completely different films. One, colored by online discourse over the last 20 years, and the other, colored by just as many years spent in forums, wiki pages, and libraries, absorbing every little detail of this world and story. A completely different version of the movie constructed through 2 decades of extended material and fandom discussions. Of course, it's silly to say the films are bad. They are but empty vessels with which a vast, unseen mythos can be revisited time and time again. All flaws can be forgiven. To make this very clear, I turn on Phantom Menace and am immediately confused as to who the fuck the Trade Federation is. Luck knows not only who they are, he knows when they were established as well as why them being involved in this at all is significant. So I did my best to try and see if I could see what they saw. I, a filthy Star Wars casual, decided to deep dive into the extended material and fandom, and I mostly bounced right off. I mean, don't get me wrong. Clone Wars is a good show that I apparently missed out on as a kid. Obi-Wan Kenobi is Baby Girl, and if fan art of him in a crop top shows on my feed, I have no choice but to reblog. But never did I feel the call to make such fan art. Never did my Clone Wars opinions get more advanced than, it's pretty good. Never was I able to watch the prequels and see anything other than the messy, well-intentioned but ultimately quite bad films I saw at the start of this journey. And it didn't matter how many times Luck tried to explain the lore to me. So, what is the Trade Federation?
How much time do you got?
I mean, I no longer found it cringe, at least. But I did have to content myself with the idea that maybe I would never understand the fandom behind the prequels. That I couldn't steal Luck's eyeballs and watch the version of Revenge of the Sith that lived in them. And trust me, I've tried. I needed to remain at the sidelines, happy that he could enjoy something so wholeheartedly, even as I found it a bit cringe. I was cursed with a lack of understanding, all the same. Then Hazbin Hotel Season 1 came out. Yeah, I'm going all the way with this one. I was told an intro like that has the potential of making some people a bit upset, let's say. My takes may be piping hot, but I actually don't as a rule try to upset people on purpose, unless your name is the Power of Luck. The intention of this video is to speak across the aisle, to try and sympathize with both stans and haters, and hopefully present my points in a way that either of them could understand. This, however, is not my first rodeo. I know that usually all that does is make both sides mad at you, and that while my algorithm will appreciate the engagement, I may not. So I ask that everyone try to be respectful. Hazbin lovers, I know that intro came in a little hot. I like this show. This video is mostly going to be in defense of you and your fandom, but I will also be criticizing the show a bit. I'll be criticizing the fandom a bit. This is all in good fun, all in the name of healthy discourse. I don't participate in being a hater of anything, as it were. But this also isn't the type of channel where I just gush about the things I like. Analysis means you gotta be harsh sometimes. Hazbin haters. I like this show, but it does not personally bother me if you don't. The tone that some of the criticism can take, however, does. And I will be elaborating on what I mean by that later. But if you took away anything from the intro, it should not be, see, she admitted the show is bad and that the fans are just blind to its flaws. Cringe! It should be, sometimes 2 people can see a single piece of art and get completely different things out of it, for one reason or another. What all those reasons might be, you may understand by the end of this video. But that being said, I'm not really looking to change hearts and minds here. I'm just here to talk about my own experience with Hazbin Hotel thus far. And I say thus far because it's not finished yet. It's getting like 3 more seasons last I heard. Who knows, if this does well, I might make more of these, but keep in mind I'm never going to be a Hazbin channel. You get 1 video per season, max. But In case you're a normal person and none of that fandom discourse bullshit meant anything to you, I should probably start off with an explanation of what exactly is. Is this actually necessary? I mean, my mom watches these. This show hasn't, breached containment. Normies don't know what Hazbin Hotel is, but the pilot has 117 million views, time of writing, so my assumption is that if you're on YouTube, you've heard of it. So, hi, Ma. This explanation is just for you. Hazbin Hotel started its life as a YouTube pilot released in 2019 that eventually got picked up by A24 and Amazon Prime. Animated by the studio Spindlehorse, it's the passion project of one Vivian Madrano, aka Vivziepop, and the story of Charlie, Princess of Hell, and her passion project. A hotel meant to rehabilitate sinners in order to get them up to heaven. Not that she knows if such a thing is even possible. It's also about so much more than what can be reasonably covered in a quick little intro, having a cast that edges on expansive, each with their own storylines, motivations, and a rather large and complex world they live in to boot. I like it. I don't think it's perfect. I think it has some serious pacing issues, for example. I also don't think it's like the downfall of Western animation and that Vivzi is a problematic hack that should delete her Twitter. I mean, she should, but everyone should delete their Twitter. It's good for your mental health, I promise. On that note, it's a decent time to mention that I'm mostly uninterested in Vivziepop as a person. Outside of giving credit where it's due, I'm largely uninterested in discussing creators at all, unless it's a special case like J.K. Rowling, where supporting them could result in demonstrable harm. But even then, I think the answer ultimately is just not giving their work attention. I'm not the first person to say that trying to prove the creator is a bad person to prove that their work is bad is pretty silly. Even if you're right, congratulations, you've made base drama content that you've decided to call a review for some reason. And most of the time, they're not right. The best they can prove is a history of some mildly problematic kinks, and that's not even mentioning how stalkery some of these investigations can get. If you ever find yourself digging through a complete stranger's Twitter history for any reason, please delete Twitter. Vivziepop is a complete stranger, one that I will likely never meet. She is the creator of Hazbin Hotel, and Hazbin Hotel is her baby, and with that respect, she's not irrelevant to this discussion. Animation is a collaborative medium, but this is her child we're talking about. Vivziepop will be as relevant to this discussion as she needs to be at any given time. If you disagree, or want to tell me about some scandal she had that you think will change my mind, feel free to email me at lilypolly_gofuck. I'm gonna let you all in on a little secret. I thought the pilot was just okay. At least when it first came out. I was 19 at the time, by the way, a mere semester away from getting an associate's degree in illustration. And maybe because of that, I was a bit of a pretentious shitbag. I was starting to get halfway decent at this whole art thing, was developing a sense of taste, but still didn't understand well enough the gap between myself and artists that actually make money off their stuff. A gap that I still haven't quite crossed, by the way. Donate to my Patreon. Well, I didn't understand that gap. I didn't understand criticism as a skill. I didn't understand how truly inappropriate it was for someone of my, at the time, skill level to try and speak on stuff like this with any level of feigned authority. Above all that, I barely understood the concept that I basically made the thesis of my Hitalia video, that it's okay to take uncomplicated joy in art, even in art that you perceive as lesser or cringe. Basically, I let this imagined idea of perfectionism get in the way of my real enjoyment of this pilot because, well, it was kind of cringe, and I was at a stage in my life where that word held real weight. The art style was dangerously close to what I thought of as the furry art style, for one, and my personal, as well as to a lesser extent our cultural reckoning with how fucking badly we've treated furries over the years hadn't happened yet. So that alone was enough to put a bad taste in my mouth. Furries are important to the story, just put a pin in it for now. There were things that I liked, though, things that I even remember praising. I liked the lesbians, at the time having identified as bisexual. Vaggie was a bit 2010s Tumblr in her fashion sense, yes, but Charlie was immediately charming. She's basically a displaced Disney princess, and that's by all indications a very intentional parallel. Plus, hey, I liked Disney. I still had it in my head that working for them was a viable career path at the time, so Disney princess with a bit of a dark twist had some appeal. The very fact that the show took place in hell was also novel. I, like many queer people that grew up in religious households, get a bit of a kick out of media that uses Christian iconography or lore in subversive ways. And I feel the need to clarify this love because I think it gets misunderstood by outsiders, either straight allies who are wholly outside of the culture, or queers who are lucky enough to not have religious trauma for one reason or another. Like, I've seen more than one person claim that Vivzy and others like her are committing a homophobia by putting devil imagery all over their queer art, as if they're confirming directly that queer people will go to hell. If you believe that, I get where you're coming from. And I won't deny that there could be shades of self-hatred in this tendency, but I'm sorry, you're just wrong. The word trauma can feel overused at times, but religious trauma really is the only word for it. Imagine, if you will, being forced to go to a weird building once a week where an otherwise trusted and kind adult, as well as a gaggle of the worst peers you knew at the time, tell you literally non-stop that people that have thoughts like you do are evil and will go to hell. Imagine that times 6 if you were unlucky enough to go to a private Christian school and suddenly you're dealing with that on basically every day that ends in Y. It's pretty difficult to not internalize that message on some level. And while I'm sure there's someone who's managed to fully unbrainwash themselves, couldn't be me. Your best defense mechanism then becomes reclamation, an acceptance of the premise, with the giant asterisk that so long as your weird queer friend group is there with you, there's no place you'd rather be. Plus, demons are kind of cool. And if that subversive media begins and ends with the idea, what if the demon was sympathetic? And sexy? Well, there's no harm in that, is there? It's in this tradition, both the queer friend group and the demon but hot bits, that Hazbin Hotel lies. And that I understood as an older teen. It was maybe because I thought I got it, so to speak, that I felt more vindicated in some of my criticisms. Well, criticisms. Like I said, I was a pretentious shitbag, and that was usually expressed in me being overly harsh or just kind of mean when it came to expressing my opinions about art, whether it be a classmate's or a viral YouTube pilot. If there's one reason I'm glad I didn't have the idea to start a YouTube channel back then, it's that version of myself is doomed to obscurity, only to be referenced in the abstract and nostalgia-ridden videos like this. I've for sure turned down the meanness since, though I can still be a bit self-conscious about it. See, I like critique. I like thinking about the things that I like, and in equal measures, I like when the flaws in the things we like tells us things about ourselves as people or art as an abstract concept. If there is any grand statement to be gleaned from this channel, I hope it is that. But good-natured critique with a philosophical goal wasn't what I was doing when I claimed that the art style was cringe and that the animation was amateurish and overly bouncy. I was being an ignorant shithead, because for the time, the Hazbin Hotel pilot's animation quality put it in the 99th percentile of animation pilots. We're pretty spoiled nowadays, mostly because Vivzy Pop came in and changed the industry, redefining the quality expected from a pilot by your average internet goer. Because, have you seen what the Adventure Time pilot looks like? Can you even fathom the MS Paint nightmare that constitutes the first Rick and Morty short? At the time, I hadn't. So I didn't know enough to understand how hilariously stupid it was for me, of all people, to refer to it as amateurish. I was spoiled, would continue to be spoiled, and it wasn't until I looked back that I realized it. And not just in a, it could have been worse kind of way, but in a, some of these cuts are in fact brilliant, and I guess my glasses prescription was off at the time because I didn't see it. I just saw angel dust and the furry sensibilities behind him. I saw Alistair. Alistair was a pale imitation of all that I loved, combined with all the cringe Tumblr sensibilities that I felt too afraid to engage with for one reason or another. It is not lost on me the irony that I hated him but loved Sebastian from Black Butler, when basically the only thing separating them is a substitution of 2000s Japanese goth fashion influences with a 2010s American emo aesthetic. I mean, that was Japan. It was foreign and cool, cultured. It wasn't... Okay, we need to talk about... I'm mostly stealing from the very good ContraPoints video on the subject here, but it's an interesting concept, yeah? There's in-group cringe, the embarrassment you feel from seeing someone you identify with behave badly in public, and out-group cringe, a kind of freak show-esque point-and-laugh instinct stemming from a desire to assure yourself that you are normal. You're not one of those people, anyway. It's ego preservation, basically, one that I've always at least partially suspected stems from jealousy, or at least it did for me. I was somewhat familiar with Vivzy Pop's work before the pilot dropped. I was a pretentious little shitbag, yes, but I knew and respected my internet animators well enough. The original upload is lost to time thanks to YouTube's ever-changing copyright standards, but Vivzy Pop's Die Young animated music video was her viral hit before Hazbin dropped, and it was what I and most other online people knew her for. It was also unapologetically furry. I may not be able to play the audio, but chances are you can see the animation here, and any furriness will be self-evident. And, okay, furries, I promise, you are not behind enemy lines. For this alone, any furry that comes across me at a convention is entitled to me buying them at least one drink. But as a teen, I kind of hated furries. Furries have been the internet's favorite punching bag for a long while now, and that's across the political and sexual identity spectrum. I think finally people are starting to realize how messed up anti-furry hatred really is, and the older I get, the more I can recognize shades of transphobia and ableism in anti-furry hatred. I mean, wouldn't you know, the fandom has a lot of trans and autistic people in it, but our cultural reckoning with this injustice hasn't quite run its course yet. People still see it and say, cringe. I had mentioned earlier being afraid to engage with Tumblr culture for the most part, and the older I get, the more I am able to realize why exactly I wasn't able to engage with it. I grew up with getting Christianity shoved down my throat like 6 days a week, having people call me sinful like 6 days a week, and though I was able to accept myself, conclude that they were wrong, by like the freshman year of high school, I still felt this need to not engage too closely with gay culture for a long while. That was for a few reasons. For one, I had at the time believed gay culture didn't make anything worth looking at. People around me derided it, and let's be honest, taste is dictated by public opinion more than we are strictly willing to admit, so I derided it. The other reason is that I didn't want to be seen as one of them. I was comfortable with certain things, cutting my hair short, cuffing my jeans, getting into flannel, whatever. I was gay, and most people either knew or suspected, but I didn't want to look too gay. Because, while people suspected, it wasn't the type of thing they openly talked about, at least not to my face. And I knew deep down that if it ever came down to that, shit was over for me. So, I tried to separate myself from the gay sections of the internet, of the culture that I thought went too far, whatever that means. I tried to present myself as one of the good ones. And in secret, I was deeply resentful, wanting the freedom to play around with identity and expression, wanting to make art without feeling like I have to look over my shoulder. I wanted to live without self-consciousness, but I couldn't. So I called that kind of living cringe, because I lacked the imagination to understand what that kind of freedom may have been like. I saw someone else like something, wanted to like it, but couldn't bring myself to. So I called it cringe. A part of me feels cheated, you know. I feel like I missed the window of time where I could have been developing a taste for furry art, where I could have made piles of OCs and farmed DeviantArt followers, where I could have dressed like a boy for a week to see if I liked it. I feel too grown, too settled now to do any of those things, but I'm not too old to recognize shades of bigotry and self-hatred in equal measure in my own distaste for furries. I can recognize my own jealousy at missing out on that 2010s American emo aesthetic and appreciate the weird eclectic elements that make up. By Apocrypha, I mean not canon. Not the bits that everyone agrees is a part of the holy text, but the extra bits surrounding it. Fanfiction, supplementary comics, ironically, Word of God, i.e., things said directly by the creator that are often subject to change upon future, more official releases. I mentioned how important Apocrypha was to the Star Wars prequels experience, and you might be expecting me to say that it was Apocrypha that got me into Hazbin Hotel based on that, but honestly, I'm someone who, as a rule, avoids Apocrypha. Outside of a crippling AO3 addiction, anyway. I read the Hazbin comics when they came out because a friend recommended them, and then I mostly proceeded to not think about them. I never went to any live streams or other events. From the pilot release to the first episode drop on Prime, Hazbin Hotel mostly didn't exist to me, outside of it being the sister show to Helluva Boss that would come out eventually. I'd argue that the lack of anticipation and expectations worked in my favor in the end, but we're not at that part of the story yet. Most important to this part is that for just being a single 30-minute YouTube pilot, Hazbin Hotel has a lot of apocryphal content, and I'm on the fence as to whether that's a neutral thing in this case or not. On one hand, it encourages fan engagement and participation. It turns canon into this living thing that can be engaged with directly, rather than a piece of art to be passively observed. On the other hand, more naive fans can get confused when inevitably canon comes in and tosses aside Apocrypha, even bits of Apocrypha that they were attached to. And yeah, wouldn't you know, those old Hazbin comics are no longer on the official website, though you can still find them on Tumblr at Hazbin Hotel Canon. Absolute legend for archiving these, by the way, but considering these are definitely not canon anymore, the name's a bit ironic. I mean, I remember how angry some fans got when the new character designs were announced, even though changing designs from pilot to air is completely standard. It's near unheard of to not do that. That's the double-edged sword of encouraging such direct fan participation, I guess. You now have some very invested people who may not know how to handle themselves in public, scrutinizing your every move, every possible change causing a minor outrage somewhere within your fanbase. I like fanfiction, but I try to not get overly attached to this kind of content. As someone who was there during the John Locke conspiracy, and there again at the height of the Clans Wars, well, there is such a thing as being too invested. I guess what I'm saying is, I've been burned before, and am now more likely to take into account writer intent and motivations, as well as the reality of the animation and publishing industries before taking anything as canon or even canon adjacent. This is not a bad thing. For one, good fanfiction is good, at least partially, because it takes the characters and settings and puts its own unique spin on it. It doesn't feel beholden to the source material, and therefore can make you think about the source material in new and unique ways. For two, that's a genuine media literacy skill, being able to decipher author intent in a way that goes beyond just believing whatever they literally say in interviews. No, Tolkien does not like metaphor, but yes, Lord of the Rings was inspired by his time in World War I, whether he's willing to admit it or not. John Locke was queerbaiting you, Clamp was not, and yes, basically every manga that Clamp puts out has yaoi. But I don't know, what does all that queer nonsense have to do with VivziePop explaining the reason behind Angel Dust's fat tits in a tweet or whatever? What the fuck am I even getting at? Okay, I do have a point to all this drivel. A lesson, maybe, to fandom responsibly, lest we repeat the mistakes of the past. A reminder to remind myself to get a fucking move on with the Voltron videos already. I guess this is all to say that I like fanfiction. The fact that I am invested in this show at all is kind of unusual, and that it's maybe a surprise, maybe not really, that my actual introduction to this obsession was...
Oh, shit! Sorry, I fucked your husband.
We interrupt this Hazbin video to bring you a Helluva Boss review done quick and dirty. It's... pretty good? Yeah. Helluva Boss is one of those shows that starts out really strong and promising, and then kinda falls off. It doesn't decline in quality so much as it fails to match up to the potential that the first few episodes had. It starts out super funny. I know nowadays the cool thing is to decry its humor and dialogue style, say it's nothing but cursing. Haha, VivziePop comedy sure is cringe. Which is so frustrating on so many levels, honestly. For one, it's not the Vivzy Pop comedy style, it's the Brandon Rogers comedy style, a very fast-paced, vulgar internet humor type of comedy that pays homage to the likes of Eric Andre, while clearly being deeply rooted in the YouTube funny man lineage. If it's not your style of humor, fine. Comedy is subjective. I'm never going to be mad at you for just not liking a thing. I am a bit mad at how people seem to be so upset at the vulgarity in particular, though. Like, it's giving Puritan. It's giving I'm 16 and my parents told me yesterday that swearing is immature. Listen, swearing doesn't make you cool, but moralizing swearing makes you a fucking narc. So saith Lily Polydora 2025. I am, however, very mad at the fact that people seem to be aiming this criticism at Vivzy in particular, when if you're familiar with Brandon Rogers' content, or have just been paying any amount of attention to this video, you should know that the term Vivzy Pop style of writing is incredibly flawed, because he is as, if not more, influential to the way that Helluva and Hazbin characters tend to talk as Vivzy Pop. Okay, honestly, Helluva review, paused. My thoughts on it aren't even that interesting. I like it fine. I still watch the new episodes that come out, and yes, I agree that the drama isn't as good as the comedy. We need to talk about Vivzy Pop, or rather y'all's weird relationship with her. I said she would be as relevant to the discussion as she needs to be, and now what she needs to be brought up, trust me. Not because I have anything insightful to say about her, and definitely not because I want to turn this into a weird drama video, but because the way she's been treated on the internet really says something about us as a culture. Because Brandon Rogers is probably responsible for the Helluva comedy style. Are we just going to ignore that he plays the main character and has a writing credit for much of the series? And is more or less an internet darling. But whenever someone wants to decry it for being garbage, it's suddenly the Vivzy Pop style. And oh my god, I can't even go through the comments section of a Hazbin Hotel TikTok AMV without finding at least one shithead that hates this random woman they've literally never met for nebulous reasons. And let's not beat around the bush here. A huge reason behind this gap in online reception is a sexism thing, right? I've seen this story play out in real time way too often, and it's always a femme at the center of it all. And I'm always baffled by how little we seem to learn each time this happens. NSFW artist Derpishon has been one of the more recent examples, but I could just as easily throw in Lindsay Ellis, or maybe more relevantly, Rebecca Sugar. Nowadays, we all look back at Steven Universe as a flawed but deeply important piece of media made by a bunch of very talented people legitimately revolutionizing the industry. It's a legitimate piece of animation history and generally accepted to be pretty damn good. This was not the average take. Even just a few years ago, however, people used to have a lot to say about the writing, art style, animation, and characters, and a lot of their ire got directed right at Rebecca Sugar as the femme face of the operation. Yes, some of it was just critique of the show, but some of it was deeply uncomfortable queerphobia and misogyny from serious right-wing creeps. And some of it was deeply uncomfortable queerphobia and misogyny from other femmes and queers, sometimes disguised as good-natured critique.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
The mechanics behind such behavior are beyond the scope of this video. I recommend Sarah Zed's video Sacrificial Trash for an actual deep dive into that phenomenon, but it needs to be acknowledged that a lot of complicated feelings are coalescing and then boiling over into some pretty nasty friendly fire. In Sugar's case, it continued to boil over until the YouTuber formerly known as Lily Orchard, another queer woman, made a truly awful analysis of the series that barely went short of calling Sugar, a Jewish person, a Nazi. The sheer backlash that video got kind of helped recenter the conversation around Steven Universe, and consequently made the conversation around Rebecca Sugar a lot less toxic in the long run. And honestly, that's one of the milder cases. Lindsay Ellis's now delisted Mask Off, a video in which she details her own canceling, comes to her own defense and announces her own retirement, has to be one of the most deeply uncomfortable things I have ever personally seen. I mean, it's an hour and 40 minutes of a woman breaking down, detailing some of the most horrible moments of her entire life, and quitting the job she's had for over a decade. All to get some trolls, mostly other white women, to shut the fuck up. I gotta ask, are we waiting for one of these things to happen in the Vivzy Pop story? Are we waiting for her to get canceled or for some shitty YouTube expose to bring light to the horrible farce again? Like, I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired. Or maybe the right word is worried. So, early this year, due to some interesting real-life circumstances, it basically became clear to me that maybe my only shot at financial independence was succeeding at this whole YouTube thing. And I mean, yapping about cartoons on the internet, this would basically be my dream job. So I wasn't broken up about it. But if you ever meet me in real life, you may or may not be surprised to learn that I am a very socially anxious person. An anxious person in general, honestly. I'm also someone who tends to speak her mind and who has hot takes from time to time. I'm a queer woman who, for the sake of paying the bills, is trying to figure out how to be a visible online figure who is at this point deeply aware that doing so is dangerous. Because, who knows? Maybe I'll say something wrong on a Twitch stream, make a post about a problematic ship that I happen to like, or even just have some rando impersonating me say something shitty, and suddenly I can't open social media anymore without some teenager with a Deku profile pic telling me that I'm worse than Hitler. Okay, I made a joke out of it, but that's genuinely terrifying to me. Like, I'm the type of person that can't order drive-through McDonald's without wondering if I said something wrong. I know for an absolute fact that I'm not someone who could handle a whole mob of people hating me. Doubly so if those are people that I am in community with. But I also don't want to post in fear. I don't want to self-censor. I don't want to hide my face or pretend to be something I'm not. Even if it's tempting. I mean, Jesus Christ, Ellis, Sugar, and Vivzy are white. What chance do I have? So, even if I don't know Vivzy Pop, I see this story. I recognize it. I even suspect I know how it's going to play out. And I feel a deep empathy. Maybe not for her, but for this version of her I've constructed in my mind. A version that I see myself in. And that version of myself within that construct is basically the reason this video is getting made. It's a version of me that almost wants to jump to her defense whenever someone says she's the worst or makes fun of the Vivzy Pop writing style or Vivzy Pop art style. I mean, I don't. As a rule, I'm not in comment sections. I don't tweet. But, I mean, that's also kind of what I'm doing here. Right now. I don't know. I guess I'll just have to cross that cancellation bridge when I get to it. See you at the Hazbin Hotel cultural reevaluation in like 10 years where suddenly everyone will pretend they always liked it, actually. God, I hate it here. Well, at least everyone agrees that Helluva Boss is an important show. It opened the doors for a lot of modern indie projects. It redefined how good and how successful an online animated show could be while circumventing the studio system and while actually being good. As I've alluded to, I find the show post season 1 to be fine. I'm not in the camp of people that think Stolas is the devil, but I'm also not all that compelled by Stolitz as a ship. And I think some of the drama around it is kind of weakly written. Stolas is a surprisingly flat character at the end of the day, in that despite some of his actions and the way he's introduced, as in obscenely wealthy socialite cheating on his wife, the show throws you reason after reason to see him as the unambiguous victim, who you are supposed to side with unambiguously. Ironically, I think this is why a lot of people hate him as much as they do. They can see the flaws, recognize the way the writing is kind of manipulating your feelings on a character that's introduced as being pretty morally dubious, and then internalize that as Stolas being more manipulative and sinister than he really is, even at his worst pilot self. Kind of like what happened with Sakura in Naruto. Audiences recognized the sexist writing, and then rather than calling out Kishimoto for sexism, they directed their ire at the fictional Sakura, calling her a hateful little pick-me bitch. This is a weird phenomenon, honestly, that deserves its own essay. The ways that fans will hate a specific character with a level of passion usually reserved for real femme creators, usually due to a writing flaw. But rather than discussing it like a writing flaw and making healthy criticism, perhaps lacking the words or know-how to do so, they instead take to posting about this character as if they're a hateful ex, seemingly forgetting that
I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way.
Just the emotional ways that people react to media sometimes are interesting. I digress. If this ship was just a smaller part of a larger show, it wouldn't be a big deal. But them properly getting together is the entire plot of season 2 basically, which leads to a season 2 that doesn't quite feel like the sum of its parts. Because all this great animation, amazing musical numbers, and pretty decent character development is being held together by a plot that's just kinda meh. But all those previous things were enough to get me firmly on board, at the very least. I am now ride or die for Helluva Boss. Again, I watch every new episode as soon as it comes out, and I will likely continue to do so. I mean, it still is funny. It still looks really good. It still has great songs. So, when season 1 of Hazbin Hotel was dropped on me like a thief in the night, I was really excited. I mean, I saw the potential of Helluva Boss, and saw this other project that had more funding, like an actual studio backing it this time, and it had the benefit of being the second Spindlehorse project. i.e., it could be better, because that whole learning from your mistakes thing the kids are talking about. Well, I mean, let's get into it. I wanted to give a quick thanks to all my new subscribers, most of which are coming from the Hitalia video. That video did better than I had ever hoped, and I'm absolutely blown away by how positive the response has been. I've read every comment, and if I didn't reply to every comment, that's because I'm shy. The current goal is a monetized channel, so as usual, best ways to help are to subscribe so we can get to 1K subs and comment to boost the video in the algorithm. Also, I guess hyping is a thing now. I don't really know how that works, but you could try it. Bestest ways to help include checking out my Patreon, where I have some special perks available, like a private Discord channel on my public Discord server, where you can bug me about getting back to work already, and my Ko-fi, where I do art commissions. I do basically all the art for my own channel, unless stated otherwise, so if this art interests you, contact me and a print quality original can be yours. Now, back to the show. I teased this video originally in my weird Hitalia analysis as a sort of, if we get to 1K subs, I'll make a video about the thing you like. But obviously we're not there yet, and here this video is. This is mostly because the season 2 release date got dropped. I realized I still had a lot to say that make it tossed out upon that release, and I found myself just needing to write this as a result. But somehow this essay has been actually very difficult to write. Like, it's substantially longer than my previous 2 essays for one, and I've also found myself agonizing over it way more. I've been sitting with this script for basically all of August, and even a little bit of July and September, trying to balance the review with the deep analysis with the more personal storytelling. Been debating with myself if I even want to release something so, for lack of a better word, personal. And then reminding myself that I'm kind of in too deep to start on something else. But while the personal stuff is maybe emotionally difficult, it's easy enough to actually put to page. The review. This review I've had to mull over for a long while, and that's after having seen the show like 5 times at this point, if I'm being conservative. Fun fact, one of those times was in Japanese, during a summer abroad in Hiroshima.
私はチャーリー。歌が好き。お互いを知れたらきっと最高。
If you've ever been to a Japanese class, you would know that there's no shortage of theater kids who probably made anime their whole personality for at least 1 year in high school, i.e. Hazbin Hotel's exact target demographic. It was fun. Easy enough to understand if you're an intermediate speaker wanting a bit of listening practice, though I'm going to be real, we had a moment of clarity when one of the local students came into the room. We slammed that laptop shut so fast, I'm shocked we didn't break it. Because, as much as I've been railing against the concept of cringe here, there is something about Hazbin Hotel that is inherently embarrassing, yes? You would have to know someone pretty well to recommend the show in good faith. It's why I haven't included the standard watch it before you watch this disclaimer. I've watched several friends of mine in real time bounce right off this show for one reason or another, even friends that I know are into other weirdo media, like being really into anime, for example. It's also a show in which I have to metaphorically look over my shoulder before saying that I love it in certain spaces, in a way that I typically don't for anime. One, because it is weird, right? It's a vulgar, furry-adjacent show that, let's be honest, probably needs a more robust normie filter than what's already in place. Two, because the discourse around it has gotten so weird, right? Best case scenario, they think you're just someone with no taste. I mean, how dare they say something so true? Worst case scenario, I'm standing there having to explain that I'm not an abuse apologist or something equally ridiculous. And I got into it a bit with the Hetalia video, this idea that sometimes as a fan of something you have to just deal with the fact that some people will apply the worst possible interpretations of said thing to you directly as a person, just by association, and how that kinda sucks. It's also important, however, to have nuanced conversations about the media you watch, to acknowledge its problematic elements and then allow yourself to still like the media, firm in your belief that these elements aren't an indictment on your character. No matter what some people might say or think. Because, and I believe this firmly, put this on the list of explicit channel goals, I want you, yes you, to be able to think about the things you watch and to form complex opinions of those things separate from whatever content creators you happen to watch. Even me. It's why I make these reviews so personal. It's why, in this case, I will avoid saying directly that you should watch Hazbin Hotel before continuing, even if it would make the video easier to understand. I'm just saying. Because, unless you share my exact life experiences and tastes, both having enough religious trauma and emo leanings to think that Black Butler is the best manga ever made, as well as generally preferring interesting media experiences over ones that are strictly good or bad, I can't guarantee that you'll love this. I can barely guarantee that you'll like this. I mean, the thing isn't even over yet. It's not even a complete story. And frankly, season 1, as much as I love it, is kind of a mess. It took what, 25 pages before I got to the season 1 review proper? Damn, that's like a new record. And it's that way from basically the very beginning. So, the pilot. The story of Charlie embarrassing herself on live TV through song, and Alistair joining as the hotelier mostly to clown on her because he thought it would be funny. Angel Dust is also there. Season 1 starts off with Alistair already as the hotelier, giving us a quick abridged version of the character introductions within the first few minutes. That's a choice. For sure. Okay, so when Amazon Prime picked up Hazbin Hotel, this pilot with millions upon millions of views on YouTube, they, in their infinite wisdom, decided to only fund them for 8 half-hour episodes, less than what an average season of anime might get. And to expand their episode real estate a bit, the team decided to basically skip the introduction and go forward. Fingers crossed, hoping that anyone who watches will have either seen the pilot already, or will have a friend savvy enough to instruct them to do so. This has the unfortunate side effect of making the show proper seem kind of incomplete. But I understand the decision, and I struggle to imagine a version of the story told in even fewer episodes than what we already had. Because, as is, there are some pretty blatant pacing issues. Like, that's the one criticism that I think everyone who watches the show can agree on. They just differ as to whose fault that is. I hope from my framing of the problem alone, it's clear whose fault I think it is. Prime is dropping hundreds of millions of dollars on the most expensive Silmarillion adaptation that no one wanted, and can't be bothered to give this highly anticipated indie project the bare industry standard. That being said, I don't think Spindlehorse is blameless in this, and I understand why some might lay the blame more firmly at their feet, because working within constraints is a thing you have to do as a storyteller sometimes. And if that means paring down your large story for the sake of fitting in a shorter episode count, then so be it. It could be viewed as a violation of the old adage, kill your darlings. This idea in art that your personal attachment to a piece or character comes second to the quality of the piece. And if you, I don't know, have have this super complex story about a hotel in hell that you've been working on since high school, and are as a result very attached to every little detail and absolutely can't part with more than the bare necessary because this is your baby and this may be your only shot at bringing it into reality. Okay, the plot of season 1. Seriously, watch it. This will be confusing otherwise, and go. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and also angels were there, and then he made Adam and Lilith, but Lilith was a girl boss who didn't like Adam, so she left and shacked up with Lucifer. They had a child together, and then gave Eve, who was also made at some point the apple, unintentionally dooming mankind and causing the creation of hell, heaven in order to prevent a rebellion. Not overpopulation. Unless the characters say overpopulation. It's kind of unclear. Go down and do exorcisms, culling the population once a year. Lilith and Lucifer, who got a divorce at one point, had a daughter, Charlie, who makes the Happy Hotel renamed the Hazbin Hotel by her hotelier, Alistair. Vivsy is a very special boy, her OC Do Not Steal, who is scheming something. Also, the damned can make contracts with each other and own each other's souls, and Alistair both has many contracts and is contracted with some mysterious figure, but that's not important now, because an extermination has just happened, and Adam, leader of the Exorcists, who turns out is a huge prick. And a touch underwritten, if I'm being honest. A very season 1-ass villain. Decided to speed up the next culling to happen in 6 months rather than in a year because an angel was killed and they didn't think that they could kill angels before, and it turns out the person who killed the angel was just some lady that showed up in the background of the pilot at one point, and I didn't realize she was even in the pilot until I rewatched it after having seen season 1. And also, Angel Dust is there, and Lucifer is there, again, and Alistair has a saucy little rivalry with him, and this TV head guy named Vox who was also there in the pilot, but I didn't notice until I rewatched it, and a lot is going on here. For sure. Like, you have a plot about as dense as Kingdom Hearts, and while that at least has the benefit of being a story being told over 300 hours of accumulated gameplay, this is like all through, like, 4 hours of animation. There's so much going on. So many moving parts, so many characters, each with their own implied full stories. And while it's hardly a bad thing to have a world and characters so complex, it's overwhelming unless you're willing to really sit with it for a long while. Maybe even rewatching it multiple times like I did. And even then, some of it happens so quickly, no amount of familiarity can make it satisfying. Take Carmilla Carmine, the example of this in my opinion. In case I was going too fast for you earlier, at the end of episode 1, it's revealed that an angel was killed in hell. And, ooh, what's that? A cool mystery? Who could have possibly done such? This lady, this random lady we met around halfway through the next episode, she did it. We meet her, and then 5 minutes later, we find out she did it. Just... Of course. She has her little cameo in the pilot. Of course she has a whole implied backstory, these daughters and all these relationships with other characters. It's moments like these where I gain sympathy for people who are very harsh on this show, because it's so clear that this character had existed in the mind of the creator for a long time, that they were made with the intention of being the sinner that managed to take down a demon with all these deep character motivations to boot. And then that character is just kind of implemented into the show without any real regard for pacing, audience satisfaction, or even the bare minimum rules of writing. She just seems to be here because the writer liked her and was attached to her. In another version of this series, one where they got the full 13-episode season, I can imagine them introducing her in episode 2, and then holding off the reveal, allowing us some bare minimum time to get to know this ostensibly brand new character. But they didn't get 13 episodes, did they? They got 8. And with 8, it probably would have made more sense to just have Alistair or Lucifer be the one that actually killed the angel, and then allow that reveal to raise interesting questions about these much more central, well-established characters. The characters the show actually has time to linger on for more than a musical number or two. But here's where I play devil's advocate. The reveal isn't good. God, no, is it not good. Kill your darlings is generally good advice. It's also not the easiest advice to follow. I am deeply sympathetic towards artists who actually do want to keep their darlings, who are attached to the art they make. And I instinctually want to reject this corporate mindset that forces artists to be comfortable with compromising their vision for the sake of penny-pinching producers. If you don't instinctually understand what I'm saying here, let me do a bit of reframing. Let's say you, I don't know, have this story about a hotel in hell that you've been working on since high school, and it means a lot to you. like you have put little pieces of yourself into some of these characters, have made this thing that truly reflects not only your many interests, but you as a person. Think of how frustrating it would be to find out that the one chance you get at speaking that story into existence is, oops, subject to the capricious whims of capitalism. And now you have to choose between telling it the way you want and radically changing it for the sake of a concept as nebulous as pacing. These characters, they've lived in your head, in your sketchbook, in your desktop folders for years. They're real. Pacing, that's just some critic bullshit they made up. If I can't tell this story as it was intended, I will die. Of course, capitalism is the reality we live in. Art you make must exist in this reality, assuming you want to eat, anyway. I think this is why people call Hazbin Hotel fanficky sometimes. Fanfiction tends to be really indulgent. You don't have publishers, page constraints, financial obligations. It's just you and a Google Doc. So most fanfiction writers tend to just stuff their stories with everything that they like and want to see. And while work like that can be very enjoyable, even great, well, a lot of it is quite bad in a way that's sometimes uncomfortable. Because not only is it bad, it feels revealing. You just sat there, reading a person pour their soul onto a page, and their soul? Kinda cringe. But when it's good, to take it to a realm that non-fanfiction readers may understand a bit better, what's the difference between an auteur and an amateur? Like in the realm of film. What's the difference between the middle-aged comedian self-funding a weird kung fu flick and the young man self-funding a sequel to his weird sci-fi B-movie? Well, both of these made history in their own ways. Both of these may be in my personal top 10 favorite movies of all time, but only one of them is considered good by most people. A fun fact, I have a Blu-ray copy of one of these films, and it's not The Empire Strikes Back. To be clear, I have nothing but the utmost respect and love for Rudy Ray Moore. May he rest in power. When you put everything into a work of art, even your very soul, when you are allowed to do so, you sometimes have to contend with the fact that some people will not only not like it, but will judge you personally for it very harshly. And also, yes, there is the chance that you will make history. If only because it's impossible to make art with that level of honesty and not have it hit some people in a very particular way, even if that way was unintended. Though, to me at least, it's clear that Hazbin Hotel hit plenty of people in exactly the way it was intended. Plenty of people seem to get it just fine. And plenty others saw the raw honesty on display, saw the series that wears its influences on its sleeves, and felt it was kinda cringe. Here's a fun plot twist. I actually like Carmilla Carmine. I like her weird top-heavy design. I like her knife ballerina shoes. I like her vibe, her presence, her relationship with Vaggie. I see her and I wish to know more about her. I hear the reveal that she killed the angel and roll my eyes, while also being successfully drawn into the oeuvre of this very powerful random lady. And I find myself in this odd position where I feel as though the cartoon has failed at a key writing moment, while also completely successfully doing everything it intended to do. So, what is the difference between an amateur and an auteur? Because thing good is far too nebulous of a difference for me. Subjective, but pretending to be objective. Awful. I hate it. Let's double down. Make it purely subjective. The difference is really just, does the art you're seeing shake your soul? Do you aesthetically fuck with it? Can you look at it and say confidently, yeah, that's art. That's what I'm looking at. To me, that's basically how you answer the question of, will you like Hazbin Hotel or not? When watching the first 5 seconds of the show, do you feel seen or do you feel like you're going to throw up from all this furry nonsense? Well, once I got over my furry disgust response as a person, I realized that I felt kind of seen. And it was then, that realization, that made everything, the reactions to this show, the perceived demographic stratification of those who loved it and those who hated it. It all made sense. It literally, I kid you not, goes back to how keen your sense of cringe is. If you do not experience cringe, if you've never experienced cringe, or if cringe is a daily occurrence to you, if you are cringe and accept this about yourself. I view myself as the latter, but I knew the hesitation that laid in my heart. I knew that while I wanted to view myself as above such petty concepts, I was not strong enough. Not yet. Not unless I... Wait a second. I literally kin Alistair, and none of you can stop me. This stupid twink needs to get out of my head. There are enough twinks up there. These broke bitches need to start paying rent. There's no more room. The problems with Alistair are many. He is, according to the lore, a biracial black man from the 1920s, and you would understand none of that by looking at his design. And considering I am actually a biracial black person, I'm not thrilled with that. He is also wearing the same stupid goddamn Victorian-inspired suit that, like, every other male character in the show wears, regardless of what era they're actually from. And considering my love of historical fashion, I'm double not thrilled with that. He is a pile of deviant art nonsense, from his awful fucking haircut to his horrible fingerless gloves to that little bow tie that I wish were long enough for me to hang. I also adore him. In case that wasn't clear. A lot of it has to do with the character archetype that he fills. That black butler, dapper gentleman who also happens to be a homicidal maniac. That archetype that's technically been around since literal Victorian times, when the Jack the Ripper case captured the public consciousness. This character archetype, in my opinion, fucks. I also like that he's asexual, and how that's treated like the most normal thing about him. And I don't know, you have this character that's this archetype that I really like, that's also like me in that he's half black and asexual, and yeah, of course I'm going to kind of love him, even as I find flaw with the way he's portrayed, both in those identities and in general sometimes. Because, like, what is up with his powers, right? They look cool, but we never really get a good grasp on what he can or can't do in the story. And they hype him up so much only for him to get Worf affected at the end. And like, fuck. I'm not mad that you nerfed him. I'm mad that you weren't consistent about it in the service of more visual noise in this already very indulgent series. But anyway, he is a character that lives in dualities in a way that I think is really cool. Gentleman, murderer. Contractor, contracted. Predator, prey. I am mostly uninvolved with the Hazbin fandom, with the exception of fanfictions and discussions pertaining to this little freak. Every time he gets into a fight, it's cool. Every time he has a song, transcendent. Every time he's making a stupid fucking expression or quip, amazing. Screenshot, record clip. I rotate him in my mind like a little 3D rendered JPEG. I doodle him in the corners of my notebook like I'm Vivzy Pop in high school. I'm listening to my Spotify playlist dreaming up hyper-specific AMVs of this man. I could spend easy 30 minutes just talking about my theories and interpretations of his character, like how I think his instant pissing contest that he initiates with Lucifer is indicative of the fact that he's this deeply insecure man who only feels safe when he knows he's the strongest one in the room, or how his insistence on keeping up appearances could be learned behavior from his black upbringing. If you know, you know. I could spend an hour talking about his song with Vox and how interesting all that is, because it implies a lot of history that I assume we'll get to know in the next season, and...
I gotta send a message of who's really in charge of things now.
The sequence is just, as a whole, incredibly interesting, and I think it gets a bad rap. We lead into the song with a long introduction of the V's, the trio of Overlord upstarts, including Valentino. Angel's abusive boss, keep up. Velvet. That girl that had the duet with Carmela, you know the one. And Vox, a demon implied to have been friends with Alistair at one point that fucking hates him now. But These three aren't exactly Batman villain level threats. We're introduced to them as petty, angry, kind of stupid assholes, threats only based off the demonstrable power they hold, who, outside of Valentino in a later scene, never managed to be anything approaching intimidating. And Vox starts off a song to trash Alistair, who I forgot to mention had disappeared for 7 years before the start of the show. Stay with me! And he's pathetic. He spends one verse talking about Alistair like he's his bitch of an ex-wife. A concept I'm sure Vox has a lot of experience with. And then immediately loses the rap battle and gets fucking upstaged. What was supposed to be Vox's villain song, in which he mostly came across as pathetic, turns into Alistair's villain song, and he comes across as genuinely terrifying, a real threat whose motivations we do not understand.
Oh, this will be fun.
And he's supposed to be one of the protagonists. We are reminded very early on that despite how affable he may seem, we do not know what his deal is. And depending on how future storylines go, he could in fact be the biggest threat that our protagonists would never see coming. And that's interesting, right? That's playing around with tropes and expectations, establishing little mysteries and intrigue very quickly without drawing too much attention to them, utilizing the musical format in incredibly effective ways. It's kind of perfect. He's kind of perfect. He's horrible. I love him. Someone please take him away from me. Okay, I want to continue gushing about this show. I want to just yap about all the things I love about it. I want to talk about the myriad ways in which it lovingly portrays a lot of Tumblr culture. I want to give a moment-by-moment rundown of every single influence that went into it. To be honest, the main thing holding me back from doing that, the influences discussion, not that you get the idea, is that TB Skyen did that perfectly in his video, The Character Design of Hazbin Hotel. And I would basically just be copying him if I tried. I like the video so much. I want to put in a whole section just defending the controversial episode Masquerade, but hey, what's stopping me from doing that one? Oh. Episode 4 is maybe my favorite episode of Hazbin Hotel Season 1, and that's a pretty controversial statement. If there was ever an episode to split the antis and the fans, it's this one. This is absolutely a love it or hate it kind of episode, and that has everything to do with the heavy subject matter it portrays. If you are uncomfortable discussing these, then please skip to the conclusion of this video, timestamped for your convenience. And maybe disregard my earlier kind of recommendation. Engage with this subject matter when you are in a headspace to do so, and not a moment before. We good? Okay. In case you don't know, Angel Dust is a porn star in an abusive relationship with his pimp/boss, Valentino. He sold his soul to Val and has a pretty complicated relationship with both sex work and his own body. He seems to take some pride in his work, yes, but it is also very clear that a good amount of his work is coercive in nature. He is a character who experiences and expresses a lot of self-blame, and all of this and these elements come together in his musical number Poison. An 80s style pop dance number in which images of the titillating and horrifying blend together in a way that one must imagine is indicative of Angel Dust's entire life. But in between the pop musical choice, the glitz and glamour of the stage, and the fact that yes, you are supposed to find some of these images titillating, many people accuse it of glorifying or glamorizing his situation, and by extension, sexual assault and violence in general. It is my view that this is a very uncharitable read of the situation, ignoring much of the text and subtext present, as well as being ignorant of the realities of show business and sex work. And yes, I'm trying very hard to be firm yet measured in my response, because this song's biggest defenders and biggest haters tend to come from a place of hurt. people who have been traumatized who either get exactly what it's trying to get across and very much relate to it, and people who have been traumatized who find it, frankly, a bit disgusting. I'm going to say something that is hopefully non-controversial. No two experiences of trauma are exactly alike, both in how they happen as well as how the person copes afterwards, as well as where exactly on their recovery journey they find themselves at that particular time. And now I'm going to elaborate. No one depiction of trauma will make every traumatized person happy. And in fact, a depiction very honest to one person's experience may in fact make a lot of other traumatized people very upset. This does not mean it was done poorly, nor does it mean that the upset people are stupid for feeling upset. What I think they are, and please do not take this out of context, is perhaps a bit misguided, in assuming that their own bad reaction to the media means that the thing is inherently harmful. Disclaimer, I'm mostly writing this as an observer. Whether I personally relate to Angel Dust's trauma isn't really your business, in my opinion. If you think that I need to publicly recount at least one serious life event to prove I am qualified to speak on this topic, or that anyone else needs to do so in order to write something like that into their story, you can go fuck yourself. What business do you or anyone on the internet have demanding that strangers recount horrific real-life events to you to make you feel better about the ethics of a cartoon you're watching? Okay, got a little heated there. Let's recenter. Take a deep breath with me. 5 in. 3 out. Let's continue. The musical number, as well as the scene leading up to it, is chilling, uncomfortable, in a good way. Before this point, we as the audience have gotten hints of Angel Dust's issues with his boss, mostly through that one voicemail scene where we get to watch Angel Dust listening to Valentino love bomb and then verbally abuse him in rapid succession in a way that feels pretty real if you've ever had a Valentino in your life. We see Valentino in the lead up to Stayed Gone and see just how mad he is, but he mostly comes across as a bit pathetic. Then we see him with Angel in the studio, and the tone changes. He's imposing. His anger is no longer funny now that he's near people who can't do anything about it. He's physically violent, and yeah, let me praise the framing of this scene. The way that Angel, a pretty tall character, always seems so small, boxed in and trapped constantly by Val's imposing presence. The way Val is drawn, especially in reflection, every moment of Angel's terror is felt, and that transitions smoothly into the Poison musical number. We see the black eye Angel got from Valentino moments earlier get wiped away with makeup, and with a smile, he's ready for the stage. And as images flash on screen, a mix of titillating and horrifying, we get a good grasp on Angel's life, the glitz and glamour of a celebrity juxtaposed with an undercurrent of tragedy. Angel is addicted to the poison, craves it, while fully knowing it will kill him one day. There are a number of real-life celebrity stories that reflect this. Linda Lovelace is one that comes to mind, the star of the most well-known porn film in the US, Deep Throat, the closest to a film star a porn actress has ever gotten, who in later years was very open about the exploitation and abuse she suffered. Kesha is maybe a more relevant example, however, as she has been tied to this franchise for a long while, before her direct involvement with it through the role of Queen Bee in Helluva Boss, even. The abuse she had faced at the hands of producer Dr. Luke feels like a direct parallel to Angel and Val's relationship, and perhaps clarifies the choice to have Poison be a pop number. Kesha is a pop star, after all, and while Poison is more 1980s than 2010s, the choice in genre and tempo still feel intentional. I don't know about you, but I love listening to Die Young, even though it's harder to hear without thinking of praying.
'Cause you brought the flames and you put me through hell.
And I kind of appreciate that someone was genius enough to make a song that's basically a cross of the two, the side of Die Young we didn't hear. I also kind of appreciate that Angel Dust as a character exists at all. He's not my favorite, that title still belongs to Alistair, but to have a male, feminine-presenting character, a sex worker that can both take pride in their work while also showing some of the reality of exploitation, a male who is a sexual assault victim at all in a cartoon that was popular is kind of amazing. Every now and again, I'll come across people who think Hazbin Hotel is bad, but appreciate what it did for animation. And I'm gonna say it, you aren't appreciating it enough for all of the really big swings it makes, for all of the good it has done for the culture that goes beyond just an indie animation show that was successful, I guess. I mean, what a backhanded compliment. As if the show isn't revolutionary in its own right. As if history won't look as poorly on aunties of this show as it has aunties of Steven Universe, or any other queer show that swung for the fucking fences. That being said, Hazbin Hotel is not perfect. It has its issues and is incredibly indulgent, something that can be a double-edged sword for sure. As outlined by TB Skyen in his video, The Character Design of Hazbin Hotel, the thing with indulgent shows like this is that there's always the possibility that the indulgence will, in the end, not amount to anything. That all the little details were just artistic noise, and that if you are a fan paying attention, you are in fact wasting your time. And while, if anything, this video is a tacit endorsement of these little details, of your ability as an audience member to hyperfixate and analyze all that indulgence, regardless of whether it amounts to anything or not, I find myself thinking back to my friend who likes the prequels. Is Hazbin just visual noise? Is it just basic surface-level themes about classism and a world too confused, too overstuffed to really be able to get it across well? Is it not the sum of its parts? Is it bad, actually? I think I've come to the end of this discussion with myself and found that, for the most part, I do not care about the answers to these questions. Is Hazbin just visual noise? Well, visually it's very noisy, but so is Decora fashion, and I love that shit. Is it just surface-level themes about classism and junk? I mean, the themes present aren't exactly groundbreaking, nor does it have time to dig into it. But maybe they will in season 2, and then maybe I can talk about it and you'll all feel very silly for waving that around like some huge gotcha. Is the world overstuffed? I mean, yeah, but all the better to fanfic about, my dear. Is it lesser or greater than the sum of its parts? Well, it is its parts. It is nothing if not all these disparate parts and elements and flourishes. It is all these different things that are there solely because the artist likes them. And if you are willing to sit down and have a conversation with the artist, metaphorically, still not telling you to slide into Vivzi's DMs here, about all those little bits and bobs, you risk the chance of having a seriously good time. And is it bad? I don't know. Taste is subjective. I liked it. I told you like a lot of reasons why I liked it, and I remain kind of skeptical that a judgment so extreme can even be made about a show that isn't finished yet. What I do know is that Hazbin Hotel is cringe, and so am I.